What's up, y'all? My next guest is a former NFL player who took a stand at a time when it was deeply unpopular to advocate for gay rights. For that, he says he was booted from the National Football League. He recently became even more well-known, one could say, because of the stances he took in speaking out against a MAGA-themed plaque that was going up at the Huntington Beach Library. I discussed that, his activism, and even some Randy Moss stories with my next guest, Chris Kluwe. Enjoy. All right, what's up, y'all? We have a very, very special guest, as you see on your screens. As I told him just prior to coming on, his energy in giving so many interviews is practically unmatched at this point. It feels like he's going through the car wash. Former NFL punter and proud outspoken advocate, Chris Kluwe. Hello, Chris. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for hopping on. I have a ton of questions for you, not just with what happened at the city council. I know that that has been the talk of the town, and we're going to start with that, but also some random football questions that I have for you down the line. So everybody knows it at this point, but I will read the transcript. You stated to the Huntington Beach, all conservative, by the way, city council, quote, MAGA stands for trying to erase trans people from existence. MAGA stands for resegregation and racism. MAGA stands for censorship and book bans. MAGA stands for firing air traffic controllers while planes are crashing. It's the wrong word here is funny, but it's almost funny that that isn't even talked about at this point because of all the crap that we're dealing with. MAGA stands for firing the people overseeing our nuclear arsenal. MAGA stands for firing military veterans and those serving them at the VA, including canceling research on veteran suicide. MAGA stands for cutting funds to education, including for disabled children. MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. You may have replaced a swastika with a red hat, but that is what it is. First off, wow. Secondly,
Thanks.
how long did it take you to find the words to describe MAGA to a T like this?
So it actually didn't take very long to describe it. The thing that took a lot of time was actually sourcing it, right? Because
Mm.
when I knew I was going to put this speech up online at some point, and I wanted it to be like people couldn't just say, "Oh, you're being hyperbolic," like you're making stuff up. Every single claim that I make in there is actually sourced to a news report, and from reputable institutions like the Guardian or CNN or semi-mainstream media. Like this isn't just like some fringe website. Like these are things that are actually happening. And so, yeah, I definitely had a plan in mind of how I wanted to portray MAGA, and it's the truth. Like that is who they are.
Agreed. What I found to be pretty interesting is when I was going through the city council and the members of the city council. Obviously, you're a Huntington Beach resident. You know about this stuff. But
Mhm.
council member Gracie Vandermark, as the LA Times reported, once created a playlist on YouTube titled Holocaust Hoax, exclamation point. I mean,
Mhm.
just a little fucked up. She used the term colored people to refer to black folks. She goes to events with the Proud Boys. I
Mhm.
believe she went after displaying the pride flag in public as well. Pat
Yep.
Burns, the appointed new mayor of Huntington Beach, showed up to one meeting with a busk of Trump. He declared Huntington Beach a non-sanctuary city. We could go over the other members as well. But I suppose the question is, how do you even reach these people when they don't want to be reached and they just want to basically bat signal to the president that they are loyalists through and through?
Right. So that's really been kind of the struggle is making the rest of the community aware of who these people are. Because Huntington Beach leans fairly conservative, but it's a really small C conservative, right? Like it's people who want lower taxes and don't build houses in my backyard. Like that's who the conservative people, the majority of the conservative people in Huntington Beach are. And when they see a candidate that has an R next to their name, they're going to vote for the candidate because they're Republican. The candidate's Republican. I'm going to vote for the Republican. And so I don't think they realized what kind of wagon they hitched themselves to. And my goal is to really bring attention to the fact that this city council doesn't care about Huntington Beach. Like, they don't care about us as a community. All they care about is gaining more political power, gaining more influence, and making their way further into Trump's orbit. And we've already seen it happen. Like our previous city attorney, Michael Gates, he brought a bunch of nuisance lawsuits against the state, wasted a ton of taxpayer dollars to try to prevent affordable housing from being built. I think it was like 4 weeks ago, he got hired for Trump's DOJ, funnily enough.
Of course.
I believe it's in the Civil Rights Division. So we'll see how
even
that goes.
better.
Right. And then our one of our other council members, Tony Strickland, just won a race for state senate here. It was an emergency election. He's been in Huntington Beach for all of 2 years. And the only reason he came to Huntington Beach is because he had to move out of Ventura because he got caught embezzling. So he couldn't serve in public office there anymore. Like, these are the people we have to deal with.
Okay, wild. Can you tell me more about the embezzlement scheme? Have you read up on this? This is news to me.
Yeah, so I read up on it. It was a campaign finance thing where he eventually settled. I think he had to pay back like $70,000 or $80,000, but he did that to avoid like getting actually charged for it. So yeah, he was no longer allowed to be in politics in Ventura. So he's like, well, I'll just move south an hour and a half and see if I can convince people there.
Right. It feels very Tuberville-ish, the way that he relocated, which actually I'll touch on a little bit later. There was one resident who told the LA Times, her name is Barbara Richardson, it turned out the joke was on me because this plaque, which is what you were speaking out against, I should have mentioned that. This was a council meeting where it was a 6-0 vote approved the plaque that spelled out magic, alluring, galvanizing, adventurous, an acronym, of course, for MAGA. So that resident, Barbara Richardson, I continue. It turned out the joke was on me, she said, because the plaque really is the real design. From far away, it looks like the plaque is celebrating 50 years of MAGA, as the word is dead center in the middle of the plaque. This is where one's eyes is drawn to a political slogan. She would say, are political slogans even allowed to be installed on city buildings? Why shouldn't the city be neutral? What's your reaction to that?
Right, and that's what we've been trying to tell the city council is like, we don't want the library to be politicized. Like this whole thing with the plaque is just the latest in a series of events that the city council's been messing with the library. Like it first started with a book ban that Gracie Vandermark brought forward. She wanted to ban a bunch of books from the children's section, almost all of which dealt with LGBTQ issues.
Of course.
Surprise, surprise. The community got outraged about that. So then they moved to, okay, well, we're going to establish an oversight panel composed of like 21 people to judge the content of all the books in the library. Never mind that the librarians already do that. That's literally their job. And so this oversight panel, if there was any content that they felt was inappropriate, it would go into its own special little room. You have to get a pass to check it out. Mm-hmm. And so the community was like, well, you're just trying to ban books again. So we started a petition to stop that, got over either like 16 or 17,000 signatures.
Oh, wow.
So, clearly there's some interest in like not having this be a thing. Then they moved on to trying to privatize the library. Everyone was like, hold up, you can't privatize the library. Like, it's a public community library. Like, the library's fine. We got another petition, another 16, 17,000 signatures. And so those two ballots actually were in the same agenda meeting where I got arrested. They tried to ignore both of the ballots, then realized they were in violation of state law. So now they've decided that instead of either accepting the petitions and just getting rid of the oversight panel and putting, if they privatize the library, we want it to go to a public vote. So that was the second petition. Mm-hmm. So instead of just accepting the petitions or putting the petitions on a normal general election year ballot, they've decided to do a special election for it, which is going to cost us a ton of money that we don't have. Like, we're already in a budget deficit, and it's going to be low turnout, which they're counting on, because they're just going to muster their mega church that's in the area and say, go vote for these things. So now we got to figure out, okay, how are we going to get people aware of this and get out and vote and help protect the library? Because for whatever reason, this council has a hard on to mess with the library.
That is, I think, what so many outside of MAGA are thinking is, how do we fight the good fight and reach these people who are getting screwed? And yet simultaneously, if we're being fully transparent, there are many who have straight disgust for a lot of these people because they put so many marginalized communities in a bad place. So do you feel like you are, in a way, like I've seen your Blue Sky posts, the guy who flipped you off, the older gentleman who yelled at you outside of city council. Do you feel like some are having an awakening?
Yeah, so my whole goal is not really to reach the MAGA folk, because I don't think we're ever going to reach them. Like they're in a cult, they're getting propaganda
Yep.
shoved into their face, 24/7 from Fox News, from Facebook, from OANN. Like it's literally, there was actually a chart that came out today of people who believe Zelensky is in the right. Republicans just dropped off a cliff. Like after that Trump news conference, it's at like -40 for Republicans who believe Zelensky is in the right. And that's solely due to the messaging that they're getting through their propaganda machines. And like we're not going to be able to deprogram those people. What we have to do is find a way to make the small c conservatives understand that right now you're being the good Germans. Like you voted for Hitler thinking he had your best interests in mind, but guess what? He doesn't have your best interests in mind. He only has his own interests in mind. And if you don't want to have a lot of regrets after the bodies stop falling, maybe do something about it now so we don't get to that point.
So I was going to ask you about that. In a CNN interview, you were asked about Trump's anti-human rights policies, including the line of the American public voted for Trump. What do you say to Americans who say, yeah, we voted for him? And your answer was Hitler was elected too. And there were a lot of very good Germans who believe Hitler was going to have their best interest in mind. So you sort of answered my question, but how, for those who are unaware, as we have seen the blueprint laid out, how is Trump the modern day Hitler to you?
Yeah, so the most important thing right now, currently, that he's doing, he's trying to erase trans people from existence. And that is what Hitler did as his first step. He identified a vulnerable group, started going after them. Obviously he hated Jewish people too, LGBTQ people, the Romanov, I don't want to say gypsies because I think that's a slur these days. But there were a bunch of groups that he wanted to get rid of, but it started with the trans community, and that's what Donald Trump is doing. And you can already see that after they think they're done with the trans community, they're going to go after Oberfell. They're going to try to get rid of same-sex marriage. Once they get rid of same-sex marriage, now they're going to go after the LGBTQ community as a whole. They're already lining up to do that by trying to repeal Section 230, which is what prevents internet providers from being sued for content people post on their platforms. The right wing believes that LGBTQ content is pornography and that people who are in the LGBTQ community or advocate for it are pedophiles. So all of a sudden they're going to be trying to make the LGBTQ community disappear, as well as those who support them. And it literally is step by step of how do you commit a genocide? That's just that specific part. The other things that Hitler did started dissolving useful parts of the German government in order to concentrate power into his own hands. I think we're seeing that happen in real time right now. Got rid of generals that knew what they were doing in order to install loyalists. We've already seen that happen. Mm-hmm. Firing your JAGs in order to install loyalists, so that way they can say, no, this order is perfectly legal. When you're talking about like what can the military do or not do, that's a good way to commit war crimes. Because if the JAG says, oh, this order is legal, well, then the soldiers are going to carry it out. I would hope that our soldiers have enough, presence of mind to realize, wait a minute, even if the JAG says firing on civilians is legal, we shouldn't do that because our oath is to the Constitution first. But I don't know. Like that's a really scary area we're getting into. So yeah, like people say I'm being hyperbolic when I compare Trump to the Nazis, but the thing they don't realize is the Nazis didn't start with concentration camps and gas chambers. Like that was not in the initial plan. However, it was the natural endpoint and evolution of what they wanted to do. And we're seeing Trump already starting to do that with the deportation of immigrants to Guantanamo and to Panama. And eventually there's going to be too many people for them to deal with, undesirables that they want to deal with. And then that's where you start getting into, okay, well, how do we solve this? What's our final solution?
Here's my question. And I concur with everything you're saying. When we started seeing these bills come up and it began, the inception, it felt like, was protecting women's sports, quote unquote. And then you see the Riley Gaineses start to become super, super popular. And Tate Reeves, Mississippi's governor, signs an anti-trans bill. You see Ron DeSantis sign an anti-trans bill. It basically started with protecting women in sports and sports overall. That, do you feel like, revolutionized and made a huge impact and dent in many minds of the electorate? Whereas, as I have seen, which is insane to me, because each marginalized community should be stood up for, that Democrats basically punted. And now I'm seeing even some Democratic leaders saying we will continue to lose elections if we focus on the trans issue. I'm blanking on the trans lawmaker from Kentucky. I believe her last name is McBride. She was asked about using the bathrooms, and she punted on that as well. So it's a two-parter here. The first is, do you believe that the impact of the sports trans overlap led Republicans to this point to be incredibly extreme? And why do you think Dems are punting on this issue?
Yeah, so I think our media, specifically our national media, has completely failed us on this issue, and that they've been carrying water for this for a long time. The New York Times in particular has been egregious in their anti-trans coverage and their attempts to portray it as a both sides issue instead of a what the fuck are these assholes doing? Like, and that is the only legitimate response you should have to something like this, is what the fuck are these assholes doing? Like, you're going after a marginalized community, and if you really cared about protecting women in sports, you wouldn't be trying to also get rid of Title IX, because that protects women in sports. And so it never was about protecting women in sports. It's about controlling people's bodies. And the fact that no one pushed back on that, who was in a position of power, is an indictment on them, and the fact that they didn't stick up for those who were oppressed. In terms of our lawmakers, Democratic elected officials have an unfortunate tendency to want to follow public opinion instead of trying to lead public opinion.
Yes.
And that's one thing that Republicans do very, very well, is they lead public opinion in that they say, this is what is going to happen, this is what we believe, and then they get their base in line behind it. Whereas Democratic officials, the vast majority of them are like, well, let's go to our consultants, and see what people are saying. And it's like, well, if Republicans are driving the conversation on what people are saying, you're going to the Republican side. Like, you have to be leaders. You have to say, no, this is not right. The trans community needs to be protected. We need to speak up for them. And we need to make the case that it's not just the moral and ethical thing to do, it's also the politically correct thing to do. Because when we protect the trans community, we are also protecting ourselves. Because eventually the right wing is going to come for us. They're going to start with the trans people, but they're going to end with us.
Exactly. Are you aware of who Riley Gaines is?
I am. I believe she came in 8th in her race.
She came in 8th in one race and 5th in another.
Yeah. So, yeah, fuck off.
So I think here's the big question. First off, what you said about Republicans leading the conversation, 1000% yes. This whole thing about, lib media and stuff like that, it is practically a fallacy at this point. If you look on Facebook, you look on podcasting, you look anywhere, it is all dominated by conservatives, the Dan Bonginos, the Ben Shapiros, the Michael Knowles Daily Wires, etc. So with that being said, going back to Riley Gaines, why do you believe she is elevated to this point when all it takes is one Google search away from dispelling a majority of what she's saying?
I mean, it's the same reason why black men were lynched in the South, because white women claimed something and white men want to believe it because it reinforces their pre-existing preconceptions. Like, it really is that basic. Like, you get a bunch of old white men see a pretty young white girl who claims something, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna believe her. And I mean, it's a tale as old as the United States. Like, it's literally in our history that this has happened before. The only thing that's different is now she's targeting the trans community instead of it was Emmett Till, right? Like that was when it happened to the black community. Like, it's something that's been done before.
Fair point. Isn't it also hypocritical to say that they want to protect women when they have someone like Donald Trump in the office who's credibly accused of sexual assault by 25 plus women?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like, and that's the thing. The entire Republican Party is filled with hypocrites. Like the fact that Congress is ceding its power to the president is like, I can't even begin to describe how un-American that is, because the entire purpose of Congress is to be a co-equal branch of government with the president, executive branch with the judiciary. So if an executive starts to go out of control, Congress controls the power of the purse and says, good luck paying anybody. And the fact that they're rolling over and allowing a dictator to start existing, they are cowards, and they're traitors to the Constitution. And I mean that with every sense of my fiber. They are traitors to this country.
You were a political science major, correct?
Mm-hmm. Poli-sci
You
and history.
poli-sci and history, excuse me. So you have that under your belt. You played professional sports. Do you feel like at this point in time that that politics is very team sport oriented?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's and you're seeing it a lot where it's like, okay, you have to vote for your side no matter what their position is. And as a country, we have to move away from that. Like and a large part of it has been kind of the dumbing down of education that's occurred over the past 40 years, 45
Mm-hmm.
years. Basically, you can point to any point in time where things got worse and be like, oh yeah, that's when Ronald Reagan was elected president. So like it's literally we have become dumber as an electorate, but it hasn't been an accident. It's been on design. Like people who want to control other people, it's very hard to do that if the other person is educated and informed and understands what's going on. It's a lot easier to control someone if they don't understand why they're not voting in their best interests. And that's what we've seen from the Republican Party for the last 40 plus years.
Amen to that. You told Hawk's podcast that there's a huge skinhead and neo-Nazi problem in Huntington Beach.
Mm-hmm.
How has the council emboldened them, and how did this happen?
Well, several council members hang out with Proud Boy members, so that's a start. I mean, they post pictures of themselves. As you mentioned, Gracie Vandermark has been seen at multiple gatherings. One of our other council members, recently elected, Chad Williams, he's posted pictures of himself with a local Proud Boy on his Facebook page. And Huntington Beach has always had this problem. Like I grew up in Seal Beach, which is about 4 miles away, and even when I was growing up, you knew about the surf Nazis at Huntington Beach. You knew about the skinheads. You had to be careful at certain parts of Huntington Beach. And the reason why I moved here with my family, 15, 16 years ago, was it looked like Huntington Beach was going in the right direction. Like they were starting to get the problem under control. The city was a nice place. Like there were good things happening. I was like, yeah, this will be a cool place for us to live. It's a chill beach town. Like this fits. And then COVID happened, and apparently everyone lost their mind. We decided to bring Nazism back and make America great again. So yeah, it's really distressing when you see like a whole rally of lifted Trump trucks going through PCH, and there's the occasional Confederate flag or someone throwing a Sieg Heil, and it's like, yeah, this is what they're bringing to our town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's depressing, man. On Blue Sky, you wrote, just got fired from being a freshman football coach. If you want to know what MAGA does to communities, they don't care about what helps people because the school is certainly not going to find an ex-NFL player willing to coach there at that level. They only care about trying to hurt people. That is via Q Voice News that quoted you. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's and again, like I was coaching at Edison for, this would have been my 6th year, I believe. Never had any problems at the school. Like every football banquet at the end of the year, I'd have multiple parents come up to me and say, thank you for being a good role model for my kid. Thank you for teaching them. And what I said is also true in that as a former professional football player, like I didn't coach freshman football for the money. Like,
Totally.
there is no money in coaching freshman football. I did it because I knew these kids like probably wouldn't ever have a chance to interact with a professional football player, right? Like that's, 99% of them aren't even going to go on to play college. And so if I can give them some guidance, right, if I can help them understand why staying in school is important and why studying is important, because that's what's going to help you later on in life. I mean, that I liked doing that. Like it was fun to be around them, and to watch them slowly grasp, oh yeah, this is how football works. This is how life works. And yeah, it's a shame because, I felt like I was doing a good job there and I was helping a lot of people. And there's a subset of our community that was just like, well, we're trying to score points. We want to make ourselves feel good. So we're going to get this guy fired.
For the record, you said you were fired because they were receiving too much attention. The school
Mm-hmm.
claimed the move was unrelated to your public comments. Their defense was because of a post where they
Right.
said they allege you suggested violence. So what exactly happened here?
Yeah. So when they brought me in for the meeting, their exact words were, "We have to let you go." Or sorry, we're getting too much attention. We have to let you go. The meeting was cordial. We talked about various other subjects. Not once did the threat of violence or anything like that come up. About, I think it was either 2 or 3 days later, they retroactively said, "Oh, we fired Chris because he made a post threatening violence." And the post in question was on Blue Sky. It was linked to a video where we specifically stated, "Please stop review bombing the library. If you want to review bomb something, go find where the council members work instead." So I
So they
quote
didn't know
posted
what
that.
review bomb means.
Right, yeah. So I quote posted the video with the text, "Hey, I can't believe I have to say this. Stop fucking with the library. Go find where the council works and go blow those places up instead." Clearly, if you watch the video,
Oh God.
you understand I'm not advocating to blow up someone's place of employment. Like, I don't think you need to be like a linguistics major to figure that out.
Totally. Totally.
Right.
Yeah, of
And
course.
so yeah, and so there's this local Facebook group that essentially they cropped the tweet, which is a very common right wing
Yes.
tactic, right? Like they specialize in disinformation, and they made it seem like, oh, he's trying to promote violence against the council members. And so they sent it, I believe they sent it to the school, and I believe they sent it to HBPD. And so I got a call from a detective who seemed very insistent on claiming that I was promoting violence, and I kept having to push back that, no, I'm not promoting violence. I have never promoted violence. Have you watched the video?
Mm.
She did not tell me whether or not she had watched the video. I said context is important. She claimed that I was promoting violence. Again, I had to push back. No, I'm not promoting violence. Like,
What sort of
and
questions was she asking you?
so basically, so she was. It wasn't even questions. It was, she was making claims, and like I'm I know how the cops work, and it's like, no, I'm not going to allow you to claim that I'm promoting violence when you're clearly taking something out of context and you're trying to use that against me. And so like she's like, you're walking a really thin line, and I'm just like, but I'm not promoting violence. Like the context there makes it very clear what I'm talking about. And so after the call, and I mentioned several times during the call, I'm like, if it makes you feel better, I can take the post down. And then she's like, well, no, you have your First Amendment right. I'm just like, well, okay, if it legitimately makes you concerned, because again, I care about my community. Like, I don't want anyone to think that it would be a call to violence, even though it's obviously not a call to violence. So I'm like, okay, fine. I will take the post down. And then I texted her afterwards with the picture. I'm like, here's a clarification. I took the post down. Here's a clarification. And my clarification was, I forget exactly what it was. It's still up on Blue Sky, but it's like, hey, everyone, HBPD, review bombing is slang. And I have not called for violence, and I never will.
Well, good for
So
you.
yeah,
I'm glad you never called for violence, Chris. I'm really proud of you for that.
right? Like it's just like I don't want to blow. Like, I live here.
Right.
Why would I? Like, I don't want places getting blown up. Like, go drop some 1-star reviews on them. Sure, do that. Don't mess with the library. The library is a great place, and it's staffed by wonderful people.
Why does the library mean so much to you?
So for me, it's where my kids went growing up. They spend a pretty decent amount of time in there, like checking out books, reading, doing fun stuff, and also it's just the idea of a library, like sort of the abstract concept of a library is, this is a place of knowledge. It's a place where anyone can go, regardless of your political affiliation, and you can go find books and ideas, and especially you can find challenging ideas. Like, you can find things that you may not have known ever existed, and you can engage with them and broaden your horizons and learn more things. And I think that is an essential public good that we have to protect, because if we don't allow libraries to present ideas, then all we have are propaganda centers.
True. There was going to be There was something else that I wanted to ask you, and it's funny because I was at the gym this morning and I was listening to Rage Against the Machine, so it was fairly obvious where I'm going with this. Um, why do they want to ban so many books?
Well, I mean, it's like Rage says, you don't got to burn the books, you just got to remove them, right?
Mm-hmm.
like that's literally a line, and it's true. Is if people don't have knowledge of what they can be, then how will they ever know who they are, right? Like the whole point of banning LGBTQ books from children's and teen sections is that you don't want children to know that, oh, this might be who I am. And to me, that does a disservice. It does a disservice to the children themselves. It does a disservice to your community. Because when a child feels like they don't belong or that people hate them, they're they're gonna have a really tough time growing up into a contributing member of society. Because society has shown that they don't care. And that's a terrible thing to do to a kid.
Mm-hmm. What do you see for the future of Huntington Beach?
Uh, I don't know. It's like honestly, I don't know because, like I've been saying, Huntington Beach is kind of a microcosm of what's going on in the nation as a whole. And I mean, I'm gonna do my best to try to fight back against that here locally, and try to make people aware of this is what MAGA is all about. But honestly, our country is going down a really dark path, and if we don't get people acting in a hurry, and particularly our elected officials, like if they don't understand the severity of the situation we're in, I really don't know if we're going to have fair elections in the next election cycle in 2026. And again, I know that sounds hyperbolic to say, but Germany like went from a republic to a dictatorship and I think it was what, like 52, 53 days.
Mm-hmm.
And the Trump administration looks like they're trying to speed run that. So I highly recommend people make local connections, figure out who your communities are, and just be prepared for whatever bullshit this administration does. Because if we want to maintain America and the idea of the American dream, we're going to have to fight for it.
How did the council screw over Olympic surfing in the area?
Because they're MAGA assholes. like, like we're literally the surf capital of America. And we can't host the Olympic surfing competition because of our city council. You tell me how that's good for our community.
How did that happen? Can you take me through this?
Yeah, well, so it's been a whole compilation of things. It's been their stance on removing pride flags from city buildings. It's been the library stuff. It's been just their general combativeness towards both the state as well as the local residents. They did an air show settlement, which was it's not illegal, but they essentially gave away a crap ton of money to this air show, which I'm pretty sure they're connected to at least one or two of the city council members. And they've locked the city into a contract with the air show for, I think it's like the next 30 or 50 years. And we're paying like $8 million a year for this, all because an oil spill happened offshore. The air show had to cancel a day. And so they sued the city. And normally what happens in that situation is the city tells you to go take a flying leap because that's covered under acts of God. Like you can't predict an oil spill. And it's also not the city's call to shut down the air show. It's the state's call. It's the Coast Guard. Like those are the people who actually shut things down. But instead, the city decided to do a private settlement and give a whole bunch of money to this group. This group also dumps a bunch of money into Republican council member campaigns in the city. So, you know, if you want to know how that works, that's also part of it. But yeah, it's just if I was the Olympics and I was looking at what was going on in Huntington Beach, I would just be like, no, I don't want to be there. Like, and which is crazy because the Olympics are corrupt as hell.
Totally.
And yet somehow Huntington Beach managed to make the Olympics say no.
So where are they going to have it? Do you know?
I think they're moving it further north. I want to say probably like either maybe Venice, possibly Santa Barbara. But yeah, I don't know for sure, but I just know it's not going to be here.
Okay. Well, all right. Have fun with your free beaches then, I suppose, or your empty beaches
right?
during the Olympics.
Yeah. Dog Beach will be open.
Thank goodness for that.
Yep.
From a football perspective, the last time I told you this before we started off air, the last time we spoke was when you spoke out when you were with the Minnesota Vikings. If someone is unaware, basically there was a amendment, you were actually approached by Minnesotans for marriage equality who were asking your help, if you would help defeat an anti-gay amendment demanding marriage between only a man and a woman. You received approval from the Vikings, but they said you have to be a private citizen. And head coach Leslie Frazier called you in. You said the room was tense when you left. The owner, you wrote, Ziggy Wolf, said he was proud of your stances, so that was obviously great. Leslie Frazier, as the head coach, called you in again to try to dissuade you. You stated in your piece, I believe his last name is pronounced Hagen, Bob Hagen, the head of PR for the Vikings, ignored media requests to you because he said that he was trying to protect you. And then, there's a lot here, special teams coordinator Mike Pryfer asked if you wrote any letters to, quote, the gays, and said the idea of two men kissing is disgusting. He told you hell awaits you along with, quote, the gays. A separate special teams meeting with Pryfer, per your recollection, stated we should round up all the gays, send them to an island, and nuke it until it glows. You said the room was quiet. He gave you poor scores on your production point sheet, lied to the media that you would not listen to him when he intentionally did not try to have a conversation with you. And Mike Pryfer is currently, I believe, with the North Carolina Tar Heels. So let's start with Pryfer. You stated previously, I believe, that you really hoped he would not be coaching again, and yet he is. What is your reaction to that, and what does that say about pros? I mean, we can call college, pro at this point, pro football circles.
Yeah, so that's one where I really hope Mike Prefer has learned his lesson, and because so take it for what it's worth. A random person on Reddit reached out to me and said like they're close to the Prefer family and said that like it really does seem like he's changed his stance on this. I don't know if that's true or not. I really hope it's true, because the thing is I like to believe that people can change. And I mean, I'll be the first to tell you I'm not perfect. Growing up, I used homophobic language, like I used ableist slurs, and I changed, right? Like I made the choice to be a better person. And I really hope that that's the case for Mike Prefer. That being said, what happened at the time obviously was not the right thing to happen. And I stand by everything that I wrote there, because that is what happened to me. And so I think it's one of those things where there's always going to be a place in the NFL and in college football for people who have a certain type of political view, but there's never going to be a place for someone who has a different type of political view. You see that happened with Colin Kaepernick. Yes. And you see that happen with Harrison Butker, right? Like the kicker for Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Like the stuff he said about women is abhorrent, right? Like he's basically a Christian nationalist.
Yes.
But that's the right kind of politics. And so he still has a job. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the owners in the NFL, for the most part, are people who donated to Trump's campaign and voted for Donald Trump. And they're the ones who signed the checks. So they determine what's allowed and what's not allowed. And until that changes, I don't blame any athlete for not wanting to speak out for progressive causes, because they know it could potentially cost them their job.
I'm going to ask you about the billionaire class and the owners in a moment. In that piece,
guillotines.
I'm sorry?
Guillotines.
Guillotines. In that piece that you titled, I was an NFL player till I was fired by two cowards in a big. The two cowards that you named were Leslie Frazier, who is currently the assistant head coach of the Seahawks, and Rick Spielman, who is currently an executive for the New York Jets. On the Spielman front, in the wake of Pope Benedict stepping down, he texted you, I believe you said from an anonymous number, which is pretty interesting, to lay low. You tweeted about the church and their enabling of child abuse. Look, we all know the elephant in the room here when it comes to the Catholic Church. Yet when he told you to stop speaking out, what was your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, obviously my initial reaction to anyone telling me to stop speaking is going to be to tell them to go fuck themselves. Because like, I'm an American citizen. And I don't know if you know this, but the First Amendment means I get to speak. That's kind of one of the core foundations of our country. And yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right in the fact that religion does play a huge part in this. And specifically in our current state of affairs, evangelical Christian nationalism is playing a huge part in what's going on. And we as a country, we have to address it because it is essentially a death cult. Like, these are people who want to see the end of days happen. The reason why they're so pro-Israel is not because they like the Jewish people, it's because they think Armageddon needs to start in Israel. And so, like, they legit want to see the world end so they can all be raptured and be saved. Like, it's crazy because when you say these things, it sounds like you're mad, right? Like, but this is literally what they stand for. They've said it themselves. It's like, how do you get people to understand that?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. And it's funny that you bring that up because I'm interviewing the author of Jesus and John Wayne, whose name is Professor Dumais, tomorrow. And it is about how evangelicalism has played a major role in our politics and reshaping the country to fit Christian nationalism. So I'm looking forward to it. But one other thing that's just hilarious to look back on was when the late lawmaker Emmett C. Burns, who was staunchly anti-gay, when you and former Bear, by the way, because I live in Chicago, Brendan Iambadejo spoke up. He demanded basically you guys shut up and dribble. Part of what you said, I can assure you that gay people getting married will have zero effect on your life. You still laugh at this, and it's like 12 years later. That's awesome. here's part
I know
of
the line. I'm still so proud of that line.
But then, I don't even think that's the best line.
I know. There are a lot of zingers in there.
So many zingers, dude. I can assure you that gay people getting married will have zero effect on your life. They won't come into your house and steal your children. They won't magically turn you into a lustful cock monster. They won't overthrow the government. Hey, that's relevant because all of a sudden they have the same legal rights as the other 90% of our population. Rights like Social Security benefits, also relevant, child tax credits, family and medical leave to take care of loved ones, and COBRA healthcare for spouses and children. God, it's just age like fine wine. I mean, as you're hearing this once again, and to reiterate, this is almost 12 years later. Do you also feel like it's aged like fine wine?
Yeah, no, I'm still really proud on that one. Like, the whole core of that was forged in me being a troll in online forums for World of Warcraft. that's where I learned, like, arguing with strangers on the internet actually used to be fun. Nowadays it's just
Agreed. Yeah, it used to be
like,
great.
but it used to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so, like, the thing that I learned was, if you really want to get people to pay attention and, like, actually listen to what you're saying, you got to present your point with something that makes them pay attention. And if you come up with just some really absurd swear words and funny scenarios, then all of a sudden their ears perk up and they're like, whoa, wait a minute, what is this guy talking about?
I mean, I piggyback off of what you said about how it used to be fun, because I was in those Xbox Live chat rooms. Like, I was playing Call of Duty back in the day. I was on Halo back in the day. Even 2K weirdly got a little rowdy. So it's really turned into, like, the magic of shit talking and being creative. And now it is, like, woefully insane. The way that online chat rooms and video games has morphed into, and it's probably a microcosm of our politics, that some people will spew the N-word religiously and their names will be coded for racial slurs. I remember when I was playing, I think NHL 25 is the new one, NHL 24, some asshole, racist asshole, who I obviously reported, put a black NHL player's name, but they made their person to be a monkey. Like, that is how awful it has gotten. Right. So when you say, like, yeah, it used to be fun, I agree with you. It used to be amazing, and now it's just completely toxic, and it's something I don't want to be a part of.
Yeah, like, well, and the thing is that trash talk is a lot of fun, but trash talk takes work because, like, you actually have to think about what you're saying. You got to put some effort into it. Racism is easy. Like, it's really easy to be racist. And the thing is, though, is that being racist is being lazy. Like, you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to care about anyone. You just have to dismiss them as a human being. And it really sucks that people take the easy road.
When all of this happened with the Vikings, I know you said that there were some who, because Prefer targeted you, came to your defense only, it seems, one-on-one and in private. Or at least they gave you a pat on the back and said that they, had your back and stuff. Do you feel as though it would have benefited yourself? And I understand this is a league where guys do not want to speak out, but do you think your case would have been different if teammates came to your defense publicly?
Oh, absolutely. Like, if I'd had 15 or 20 teammates saying like, yeah, Chris is doing the right thing, I mean, it absolutely would have gone differently. And that's one of the things we have to understand as a nation, is that like, it can't just be me getting arrested for civil disobedience. Like, it can't just be Al Green standing up in the State of the Union and then getting censured. Like, every single Democratic official that was in that room should have walked out as soon as they took Al Green out of that room.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they didn't means they still don't understand the severity of the situation that they're in. And they don't understand how to effectively mount a defense or a counterattack.
Hey,
because
Chris,
when we stand together,
those signs were really well put together. Okay.
Oh yeah.
They were really.
I mean, they were color matching. Like, who can say no to a bunch of people wearing the same color? Clearly, that's going to work. But yeah, no, it's just like, if you're going to tell us that this is an existential threat, which it is, you have to act like it's an existential threat, which they're not doing. And so we need a whole bunch of people to stand up together and not just have it be isolated incidents, because that's the only way we're going to get through this with something approaching the idea of America.
Yes. And one other thing that really sticks out to me as you were saying that is, we were told by the Dems and even Joe Biden that this is a threat. This is a threat to our lives. Mm-hmm. This is a threat to democracy. And then what happens when Trump wins? Oh, you're back. It's great to
shaking his hand
again. Yeah, like, what is up with the messaging, man? Like, how do you do this? How do you really say that this guy is going to ruin your lives, and then you welcome him with open arms?
Yes. Well, I mean, the same thing happened when Hitler was elected. Was it the German chancellor at the time? There's a photo op of him shaking Hitler's hand. It's like, if you truly believe this is the existential threat, you should never be in a picture with this guy. Like, you should be rallying people and saying like, there is a problem and we need to address it.
Isn't the elephant in the room money in politics?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I actually gave a speech to the Democratic Club of UC Irvine last night. And they were asking me questions like, hey, so if you could fix this, like, how would you fix it? And I said, well, the core thing that we have to fix is Citizens United.
Yes.
Like, until we fix Citizens United, the problems are just going to continue, because people should be able to have their voices heard, but when one person's voice is worth 20 million other people's voices, that's no longer politics. That's someone buying an election. And I actually have an idea how to fix it. If you would actually just turn campaign finance into a system very similar to the NFL. Everyone who wants to donate money to a campaign, it all goes into a common pot, and then all eligible candidates draw from the pot, no matter what party you're in. So you don't know whose money you're getting. You just know there's money in the pot. You get your share.
I mean, I would love it. Isn't this also a pillar of capitalism, in your opinion?
So right now we're seeing what late stage capitalism leads to, and it is quite literally the death of the planet. Like, it's, just like pure communism doesn't work because human beings are going to human being. Pure capitalism doesn't work because human beings are going to human being. Like, you are always going to have people who it will never be enough for them, and they are willing to exploit other people to get even more. And the fact that over the past month and a half, have you heard anyone talking about climate change, like in a meaningful way, like that this is something we need to address?
No, and we didn't even hear it when it came to the Dem debates in past years. Maybe they had a throwaway question at the end. I believe, was it 2020 when Jay Inslee, or maybe it was 2016 when he was up there? He was one of the few who brought it up. I think Bernie Sanders might have as well, but it was only them saying, oh, here's what it was. It was the end. It was the end of the debate, and it was Jay Inslee and Bernie Sanders, when they were asked, what is the biggest threat right now?
Mhm.
And they would say either a combination of Trump, Russia, and climate change. Even
Yep.
when Kamala Harris debated Donald Trump, climate change wasn't brought up, which is
Mhm.
also going back to what you said, an indictment of our media.
Yeah, yeah, and it is really the greatest threat that we're going to be facing because yes, the rising tide of fascism is really bad. The rising tide of fascism gets a whole lot worse when water supplies start drying up, when crops can no longer grow, when extreme weather events like the fires that just burned down parts of LA, right? Like that's the state I live in. Like I mean, that's there. I think they anticipated something along the lines of like hundreds of billions of dollars in costs, like in order to rebuild from that. And it's just going to keep happening because we're not doing anything to address the problem. Because to address the problem is going to take a whole lot of work, and it's going to make us have to willingly make the decision to change our consuming habits. And we've got to do it sooner rather than later because we've put an engine into motion whose effects we're just starting to feel, and that engine is gonna keep going and it's gonna keep cycling faster and faster.
Agreed completely. You played with a very politically active player, and I don't know if you know where I'm going to go with this, but looking at the past rosters, seeing the overlap, Matt Burke was a Minnesota Viking. He, and this is a direct quote, and this is transcribed via the video, excuse me, I transcribed it, was via Heartland Signal, July 19th, 2022. So if you want to come at me, there's your source. Quote, again, rape is a obviously horrible thing, but an abortion is not gonna, caught himself and then went on, is not gonna heal the wounds of that. Another direct quote from Matt Burke, your former teammate. Well, they say abortion's legal, and it was kind of an easy out for a lot of people who didn't really want to engage. Well, it's legal. You know, a lot of things have been legal before that we've changed, right? I mean, I'm talking to a bunch of pro-life warriors here. Slavery used to be legal, right? That's a direct quote. He brought up Planned Parenthood to Sean Hannity. He also stated, pushing God out of public schools, but letting a small number of businesses and government elites and judges define what marriage is for Minnesotans seem very fair and doesn't make a lot of sense. He said a gay marriage, quote, supporting the basic rights of children and the authentic rights of people with same-sex attraction are not mutually exclusive, and we must resist the forces that are telling us otherwise. That was transcribed via the Huffington Post, February 2nd, 2016. Former teammate of yours, did he speak out like this in the locker room, and did you have to check him if he did?
No, Matt Burke was not that crazy when we played together. We actually spent a significant amount of time each day together doing the crossword puzzle. So like it would be during our lunch break. It would be me, Burke, Steve Hutchinson, and then usually a couple other of the O linemen, John Sullivan, and then I think like one or two other guys. And we do the New York Times crossword puzzle like during lunch, you know, just to keep ourselves occupied. And yeah, like it was. He seemed like a normal person. The Matt Burke of today really seems like he's bought into the propaganda. And I wish the Matt Burke of today understood that the First Amendment guarantees both your freedom to practice your religion, but it also guarantees other people's freedom from your religion. You can't force your religion on someone else. That is explicitly what the First Amendment was also designed for.
If you were to see him today, Chris, what would you say to him?
What the fuck, man? like, and in all seriousness, I would say, do you understand that by trying to force your views on someone else, you are trying to take away their freedom? And I know he's not going to understand it because if he understood it, he wouldn't be taking the position that he's taking. And the thing that like I've tried talking with I actually tried talking with like a really religious person at the most recent press conference that our city council did, complaining that the ACLU was suing the city for banning books. On a side note, Gracie Vandermark got the crowd to start chanting pedophile at the people who were defending the library, so they got that going for them. But I was talking with this woman who was obviously very religious, and I'm like, I fully support your right to, raise your kids however you want to raise them, as long as you're not harming them, right? Like whatever you want to teach them, however you want to be a parent, that is your right to do so. However, I have the same right. And if I want my kids to have access to challenging books or to books that have LGBTQ content, I deserve the right to allow them to have that access, because that's how I'm going to parent them. If you don't want your kids to have access to LGBTQ books, don't let them go to the library and read the books, or keep an eye on them when you're at the library. Be a parent.
Right. It feels very controlling.
Oh yeah, very much. And the way I look at it is, this is a movement of people that don't view children as human beings. They view children as objects to be controlled. And it's a really corrosive mindset, because eventually your kid is going to grow up, because they are a human being and they are going to make their own choices. And that's why you hear all these horror stories of, kids who grew up in strictly religious households realize that they're gay or transgender, and then their families shut them out. It's like, how can you do that to your own kid? Like you're, in my opinion, you are an absolute failure of a parent if you do that to your own kid.
I agree. One thing that, and I just remember when my wife got pregnant and there were so many people who were asking, do you want a boy or girl? And all I could think of, and I answered every single time, is a healthy kid. And however my daughter decides to grow up, I really don't give a fuck. Like I just don't care. Like, are they healthy? Are they happy? Are they getting the most out of life? Like I don't think it's that deep. Like I think with the way and being a parent has given me a new perspective, of course, but I just don't know why. I think controlling is a great word that you use. I don't know why so many people want to control their kids in a certain way. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, and again, it comes with viewing your children as an object instead of as a human being. And like kids are a lot smarter than a lot of adults give them credit for.
Oh yeah.
They pay attention to what's going on. Like they learn and grasp things very quickly. And if you raise them in a culture of hate, well, a lot of kids are going to pick that up. And then the ones who feel hated by that, they're not going to feel comfortable in that culture. And it's like, why would you raise your kid to feel uncomfortable about who they are? Just give them the tools they need to succeed. Give them the tools to make their own decisions, and then trust them that if they have questions, they'll come back and ask you.
Exactly. Some football questions, because there was another overlap of a player that you shared with the Minnesota Vikings in 2009 and 2010.
Bront.
His name, for those unaware, is Brett Favre. Look, I've covered this extensively with the Mississippi welfare scandal. When you first learned about this, what was your reaction?
My reaction was, God damn it. Because the thing is, playing with Brett was like, he was just such a great competitor, and you knew he was going to leave it all out on the field. And I think it really inspired a lot of guys for them to leave it all out on the field. And then you learn about the fact that like he's doing all this other shit. It's just like, why can't you just be a good person? Like you've made so much money. Why are you trying to take money away from poor people? Like you didn't need to do that. Like, why are you sending dick pics to reporters? You didn't need to do that. Like, it's really not that hard to be a good person.
Right. That's what gets me is the dick pics to Jen Sturger, which he denies, the Mississippi welfare scandal. He will say that, well, first off, it's still, even though there is a lot of evidence to it, allegations, but in Minnesota, I believe that there was another instance with a massage therapist that was somewhat underreported. So to go back to your point, I think it's that there are so many athletes that have different lives outside of football. And what really, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so I was going to say, like, the thing that I think people that aren't in football don't understand is that we spend a lot of time together in the locker room, but most of us don't really spend a lot of time with each other outside of the football world, right? Like you might have a couple friends that, yeah, you get together and hang out with them. But for the most part, it's like those are your work buddies, right? Like they're not like your buddies. And for example, I played for, I think it was either 2 or 3 years with Darren Sharper.
Oh,
I had
yes.
no idea Darren Sharper was a serial rapist. Like, I don't think anyone had any idea that's who Darren Sharper was, because that's not how he acted in the locker room. And that's also the case for a lot of abusers, right? Like they have their public persona, they have their public front, and then that disguises what they do on their own time. I mean, look at all the guys defending Deshaun Watson. Like,
Totally.
how can you defend him? Like, it's ridiculous. But again, you're not around him in his private time, and abusers rely on that. Like, they rely on that appearance of propriety, because they can point to these other situations and be like, oh well, I'm a good guy here, like, so these people are backing me up, so obviously I couldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm. Did you? I believe it was Old Deadspin who published it. Did you hear the voicemails that Brett Favre allegedly left for Jen Sturger?
No, I didn't hear those ones.
Okay, maybe don't.
I'm sure they're probably pretty bad.
Yeah, they're really bad. I remember Old Deadspin because I was interning for CBS Sports Chicago 670, and they linked to an alleged pic of his wiener, and then they also published the voicemails that Brett allegedly left for Jen Sturger. So yeah, it was just a lot of shit. I mean, I was looking through the past rosters, past coaching staffs. You guys had some really big names. I mean, aside from the head coaches being Mike Tice, Brad Childress, and Leslie Frazier, Darrell Bevell, who's always talked about when it comes to offensive football. Mike Tomlin is a mainstay in Pittsburgh.
He's a great defensive coach for us.
Great defensive coach. Eric Bieniemy has won a few Super Bowls with the Chiefs. Kevin Stefanski, still a head coach. Mike Singletary was a head coach. I mean, your coaching staffs were stacked, but one other name that really raises eyebrows is you had an overlap with Randy Moss as well.
Yes.
In 2010. He played 4 games, right?
Yeah. That was a really interesting year. That was the year the roof caved in.
Literally?
Yeah, literally. That was when the Metrodome collapsed.
Yeah, I thought I remembered that. What was Randy Moss like as a teammate?
He was hilarious. Like, he had so many stories. I remember he told this one story where this was on the bus, like coming back from a game as we're going to the airport. And he's telling this story about how he was at a shooting range. Because like Randy Moss is country as hell.
Yeah.
Like, he's a country dude. And he's like, so he's talking in this drawl. He's like, I'm at this shooting range, and I fire my gun, and the casing, it goes down in my pants, and I'm just yelling and waving my gun around, and this old lady next to me was like, oh my god. And the way he told it, like, half the bus is just dying. Like, we're in hysterics. It's one of the funniest things I've ever heard. And it was, but like, the other thing with Randy though is that, like, if he didn't want to practice, he wasn't gonna practice.
Hey, who's gonna stop him?
Yeah, he's like, legit. There were a couple practices where he walked out, like, kind of took a couple reps, and he's like, yeah, I'm done. It's like, okay. But then you see him, like, the next day make like a leaping, twirling, one-handed catch where you're like, how the hell did he catch that ball? It's like, okay.
I mean, you also played with Adrian Peterson. We'll get into it in a second. Is Randy Moss, and you've seen a lot of football, is he the best football player you've ever seen?
Yeah, like he's an absolute freak of nature when it comes to, like, and I think it's really unfortunate that he just never unlocked whatever he needed to, like, be that all the time, right? Like, because if Randy Moss was that all the time, I mean, he would be legendary. Like, he's already legendary, but it would just be like, this guy, right? Like, it would be unbelievable. So yeah, I just, like, I know he had an amazing career. I know he's a Hall of Famer. I wish he had been able to get his full potential, because I think it would have been just a spectacle to behold.
I mean, that's an easy segue for me, because another name that you played with, I feel the same way about this guy, Percy Harvin. Percy Harvin was so immensely talented. so incredibly fast. I mean, I felt like, and being a Bears supporter, seeing Percy Harvin scared the shit out of me as the Bears play the Vikings twice a year. I mean, what did you see from him as a teammate?
So Percy's locker was actually right next to mine.
Oh,
And like Percy was a great dude. Like he was one of those guys where you knew when he was on the field, like he was giving it everything he had. And the only problem that Percy had was he had migraines. Like, and he would get like debilitating migraines. I mean, the kind where you just simply can't function. So I think that was a big part of why, he had a good NFL career, but I don't think he ever had like the spectacular NFL career that
yep.
everyone was expecting. And I think the migraines were really a big part of that.
Damn, dude, that's sad as shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had debilitating migraines before,
Mm-hmm.
mainly from stress, to be honest with you. But
Mm-hmm.
to have that, especially in a day and age where you saw players get absolutely screwed over because they smoked
Mm-hmm.
marijuana, which
Right.
has greatly benefited a lot of players
Oh yeah.
if we're being objective. I mean, yeah, if
Well,
he,
there's no surprise that the year that Percy got hit with a drug test where he tested positive for marijuana, that he was out multiple games because like he couldn't function. Like it was like hopefully I'm not making Percy upset, but like he would legit come back during lunchtime from going out in the parking lot, and he smelled like weed. And it's like the thing is he's not smoking it to get high because he wants to be high out on the field. It was the only way he could deal with his migraines.
totally. Another name that you played with was Donovan McNabb in 2011. I
Mm-hmm.
actually interviewed Antoine Walker, who went to high school with Donovan McNabb, and they played basketball together. He said that he could have gone to a mid-major if he wanted
Mm-hmm.
to play basketball. McNabb was like 35 or 36 by the time he was playing with y'all, but what was he like as a teammate as well?
He was friendly, very, very gregarious, very, easygoing, open. I think he was kind of on the downslope of his career when he got to
Yes, he
us, and
was.
like, no shade on McNabb. Like it happens to everyone, right? Like you're an athlete, you have a limited shelf life. Like eventually, we're all going to fall apart. But yeah, it was just unfortunate because like I know watching him when he was with the Eagles, like he was one of those guys where it really felt like he deserved a ring at some point
Mm-hmm.
and just was never quite able to get there.
All right, I got one more, and I already mentioned this, but you mentioned physical specimen for Randy Moss. Adrian Peterson was a physical specimen.
Yep.
I could not believe what this dude like. I've been in awe of like working in sports, seeing how jacked some of these guys are. But the two that always got me, shit, I just blanked on the other name, but it was Adrian Peterson and Aaron Donald. Those two like are just wild to me. What did you see that really sticks out as you reflect on Adrian Peterson?
so, so my Adrian Peterson story was he shows up in the training room. He's got this giant bowl of cereal. I'm talking about like the plastic bowls that are the size of your torso,
Yeah.
and it's filled with Lucky Charms. He's just spooning them in, like, and this is before practice, right? And it's like, and you look at his body, and you're like, how are you so fit? And then there was another time where Longwell told me, Ryan Longwell, our
Mm-hmm.
kicker, he was at Bible study, and AP shows up at the door, and he's just eating a log of raw cookie dough. He's got a log of Full House raw cookie dough, just eating it like it's a candy bar.
How
Like,
though? Like how did he
right?
eat like that?
I don't know. But yeah, he was amazing to watch. Like I'll never forget. There was I think it was 2000. It was either 2008 or 2009, and we were playing Cleveland, and he had this run down the sideline where he legit like stiff arms a dude and shoves him into the shadow realm, and he just takes off for a touchdown. Like I'm sure it's on his highlight reels, but like watching it in real time from the sideline, like you heard this collective "ooh"
Yeah.
from all the players.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, did we just see him throw a grown man off the field?
That was prime AP, man.
Mm-hmm.
Prime AP was tough. Who was the funniest teammate you played with?
uh, Actually, probably my other locker room locker mate, Fred Evans. he was a D lineman, mainly played backup, but he stuck around the team for quite a few years. The dude was hilarious. Like he'd always have a story about something. And then surprisingly, he was also a really good swimmer. I guess he was a swimmer in college. And
Cool.
yeah, so like one year in Mankato, I was doing laps for conditioning, and Fred's like, "Hey, I'll race you." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll race you," because I also felt like I was a pretty strong swimmer. I never swam competitively, but like I swam growing up. And then yeah, I get in. We do a single lap down freestyle, and like he beats me by like half a stroke, and I'm not used to getting beat. I'm just like, damn, dude, he's got some skills. And I
Yeah.
mean, he's a defensive lineman, right? Like,
Right.
he doesn't look like he should be able to do that.
Right. So like a swimmer being like 270, 280, 290. Right. Yeah. It's just like a freak athlete. Um,
Mhm.
to get back to some of the things we touched on, which was the billionaire class and the NFL. I honestly, like, I've seen so much of the NFL through you, Eric Reed, Colin Kaepernick, that this didn't surprise me. And I gotta be honest, like, was it gross? Yeah, but like, it was just fugazi to begin with, in my opinion. The NFL had end racism located uh,
We
behind
fixed it. We solved racism. Take the sign
yeah, we
down.
did it, man. They had it behind each end zone. And then they removed it prior to the Super Bowl. Do you believe they removed it to appease Trump because he was going to be there and he is an out and about racist?
Oh, absolutely. Like I think that the billionaire owners made a calculated move to say that this will subtly, they hoped, align us with the new administration because they want to make more money. Like to them, this is a business. They really don't care about social rights except as it relates to will this make us more money or will this make us less money. Now that being said, I think it's hilarious that they removed the end racism and then they approved Kendrick Lamar's halftime show because holy crap, did that slap! Like that was an amazing performance.
It was an amazing performance. What stuck out to you personally?
The visuals were a big part of it, and just how it portrayed that like America is built on the backs of black people, and that black people are still a part of America and such a big part of America. And there was one particular scene where it looks the one where you have the people on the street lights, right? And it looks like it could be either a dimly lit street or a prison yard. And I thought it was a really clever use of imagery, kind of like, this is what you picture us as, but that's not who we are.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else that stuck out to you? I agree with this.
Well, I mean, A minor, like
Hmm?
I think that part definitely stuck out. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was, if you want to win a rap battle, I mean, taking your diss track to the Super Bowl is pretty definitive, and getting the stadium to chant it too. Like, guess what, Drake, you're dead.
Do you think he can come back from it?
No, there's absolutely no way to come back from that. Like, because at this point, anything Drake tries to do, it just looks like a sore loser, like complaining that, oh no, I'm still relevant, like I'm still important. It's not true. Like sometimes when you get owned that badly, you just kind of have to shrink off into the sunset.
Yeah, agreed. Especially when you're called a pedophile.
Right.
One thing that really stuck out to me, sticking with the Niners and the Colin Kaepernick theme, is that after a Sunday Night Football win, Nick Bosa wore a MAGA hat on the field.
That
So, considering your stances and Colin Kaepernick's, is it this crowd will say we don't want politics infused in sports or vice versa, which we all know is complete bullshit. But seeing how Bosa is able to get away with it, and a few other players are able to get away with it, but you are not, Colin Kaepernick is not, Eric Reed is not. How does this visual representation make you feel?
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes me upset, obviously, because again, I think MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. And I think the people who are supporting it, a lot of them are in it for that. Like they want to be racist. They want to crush other people under their heels. And, to see Bosa wearing a hat like that, it's like, you're an asshole. Like, and you're un-American because whatever MAGA stands for, it's not making America great again. It's making you great. which has nothing to do with America. The one thing I did like was I believe George Kittle called him out on it, which I thought was really important to do, because it, like, that shouldn't be happening, right? Like, if you're going to pull bullshit like that, then it does take someone like a Kittle, who's also a really well respected member of the team, to be like, hey, look, this dude doesn't represent us. Like, this is not okay.
Mm-hmm. What got me was knowing Bosa's history, knowing his father's really troubling Twitter history, and how he is practically a racist. Nick Bosa is dating, I believe he's still with this woman who thinks COVID isn't real. And also her and her sister, aside from owning a cookie business, went on a tirade on Twitter where they used the N-word freely, used other slurs freely. I believe it was from the Daily Beast or Huffington Post that published an article where the headline was Nick Bosa likes a racist, whether it was Twitter or Instagram post, or one of the two. So I do agree with you that it's just sort of saying so much and so fitting that he would wear a MAGA hat, considering the history that we have.
Yeah. No, I remember seeing those articles, and I'm like, yep, that sounds exactly like who he is.
Mm-hmm. Straightforward question. How, in your eyes, has Roger Goodell bent the knee to Donald Trump, in your opinion?
I mean, obviously getting rid of the end racism, that's a big part of it. Although I will say, I think it's a little too early to tell if the NFL has like bent the knee, because I can't think of anything else that they've done yet that's been legit, like, oh, we're going to kowtow to what what this administration wants. And I think a large part of that is because the current administration didn't really start doing stuff until after the Super Bowl was done, right? Like, they kind of had some initial things they did after the inauguration, but like the whole shitty part of what they've been doing is really just kind of ramped up over the last month or so. So yeah, I don't know what specifically the NFL might do, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them do something that upsets Donald Trump, for Trump to say that he's upset about it, and then for them to walk it back. That would not surprise me at all.
There's a former college football coach named Tommy Tuberville, who is a senator,
dumb as a bag of rocks,
from Alabama. He does not know what white nationalism is, or he's just playing dumb on purpose because he is a white nationalist. What are your thoughts on him, and also the conversation once again centering about how it is basically the mantra of conservatives that no politics in sports, or vice versa for thee, but politics in sports for me?
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, to get precisely to that point, this is a guy who insists that people call him coach, and it's like, dude, no. That's, you don't get to insist that people call you coach. People will call you coach as a sign of respect, right, if they're former players or if they've worked with you, but you don't get to demand that people do that. Like, and that's again trying to conflate sports with politics in a way that you've said you don't want to have happen. Secondly, this is a guy who was preventing promotions to generals for I think a year and a half, 2 years.
Yes.
Because he thought the armed services were too woke, and he didn't like the abortion policies the Pentagon had in place. And he was literally degrading our national security in order to try to put forward his own personal view. And to me, you're not serving your country. Like, you, as a public servant, you are supposed to serve the United States. You are not there to grandstand. You are not there to exert your own personal agenda. You are to do what is best for the United States as a whole. And Tommy Tuberville has consistently shown that he doesn't know what the Constitution is. He doesn't know what the duties of a senator are.
He doesn't know the three branches of government.
Right? Like, he doesn't know basic law, and he's only going to do what he thinks will make him feel better. And that's terrible. That's a terrible senator to have in our Congress.
Amen. You reposted, on Blue Sky. There was a journalist who edited out an interview that Tommy Tuberville gave to Fox News where he said, quote, "We're getting to a point now where women and girls sports are going to be extinct because already in states across the country, we have high school teams that are made up of totally boys participating against girls." The person that you reposted said, in California, they let dogs play basketball. Teams of nothing but golden retrievers. They're pushing the human children out of sports because the rule book doesn't explicitly say they can't play.
Right? It's just airbuds everywhere. They're dunking all over us. It's madness out here, man.
From a serious point of view, again, Tuberville knows this. Like they have this information. They do know this. Why do people take what he says seriously? Why does this have legs at all?
So the biggest problem is that, again, our media, our national media, is more concerned with decorum than with telling the truth. Because the story that you print when Tommy Tuberville says something like that is Tommy Tuberville lies about the number of trans athletes competing in women's sports, because that's the facts. There is not entire teams of boys playing against girls. That is factually incorrect. You are allowed to say that is factually incorrect. If you don't say that that's factually incorrect, you are helping Tommy Tuberville spread a lie, and you are not doing your job properly. And that is one of the reasons why I will not give an interview to the New York Times, because they have done so much harm to this country in terms of both platforming anti-trans activists, as well as their inability to call a lie a lie. And it's the same thing they did back in the 1930s when Hitler was coming to power. They carried Hitler's water. They said, oh, he's not going to do the things he says he's going to do. It's all, it's just trying to rile the base up so he can get elected. And they're doing it again. And it's really disheartening, because I know the New York Times still holds a lot of weight in a lot of people's minds. And they are a significant part of the current problems that we are facing.
Amen to that. I can't believe I'm saying this, but one outlet, even though the owner is awful, that has been printing not only very well put headlines, but accurately and creatively inspired headlines is Rolling Stone. Some of the headlines that they have put out, I've been blown away by, because these are legitimate journalists who are clearly having fun with their job, but also painting the picture of how big of a falsehood a conservative said or a Republican is running with, per se. Teen
Vogue has also been doing a really good job.
Yes, they have. All right, I got one more for you, and I really appreciate your time. Elon Musk is rich because of PayPal. And in my eyes, he is a capitalist and a socialist. He's a capitalist because he just loves money. He wants to be a trillionaire, clearly. And he's a socialist because of government subsidies. How would you describe him? And first, how would you describe him? And then I have a follow-up for you.
As a ketamine-addled sociopath would probably be the most accurate words. This is a guy who wants people to think that he's smart, but every time he talks about something, if you actually know the subject matter of what he's trying to talk about, you're like, this guy is a fraud. He has no idea what he's talking about. I wish I had gotten to start my life with a $5 million loan from my father's blood emerald mine. That would have made my life a lot easier.
Oh, yeah.
Sadly, not all of us have Elon Musk's background.
And when you look at what he is doing with our government, why are so many people bending over backwards to defend what he is doing?
Because they think that if they defend him, they'll get scraps and pieces falling from his table. I mean, and again, that's another human tale as old as time, right? Like in the royal courts, you had the courtiers, the hangers on, the gadflies, who were eager for any scrap that fell from the table. And I mean, that is what's happening right now, because let's be really clear. What Elon Musk is doing is illegal. His agency does not have the legal authority to do the things that it's doing. He does not have the legal authority to command people to do the things that he is doing. And in a sane world, our Congress would be saying that. And they would be saying, no, you cannot do this. You cannot go into these buildings. You cannot deputize your private security as federal marshals to try to act as your goon squad. Like, you can't launch rockets that explode in airspace simply because you want to launch a rocket and you have no idea what you're doing. Like, this is a man who wants to be a tyrant and is willing to do anything that he can think of to get there.
I think I saw something on your Blue Sky that he, look, I've said this in previous pieces. He is using his child as a human shield.
Mm-hmm.
He continues putting his child on his shoulders everywhere he goes in a way to show that he is family oriented, that he is a family man. When he's up to, is it 14, 15
like
kids at this point?
14, I think.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's more than a dozen.
Totally. Yeah. So how does he continue to get away with this? For the party of quote unquote family values, he has 1 million baby mamas. He has a ton of kids. He's getting sued by multiple women because he has shown that he does not care about his kids. So like how is he swindling so many people in the MAGA base for this stuff?
Well, again, because the entire base is built on hypocrisy. It's built on the idea of power and gaining power by whatever means necessary. And they're willing to look the other way if the person gaining power, if they think that person will help them, they'll be like, oh, yeah, no, what he's doing is fine. Like, it's, well, it can't be that bad because he's helping us. And, it's really disturbing to see, because if you have political principles, or if you have ethical principles, when you see someone acting against those principles, you are supposed to call them on it. You're supposed to say, no, this is not right. And this is something that the Republican Party has consistently demonstrated, is that they don't have political principles. They don't have ethical principles. The only principle they have is that of gaining power and then using that to try to get even more power. And to get back to the human shield part, it's also using his kid as a literal human shield. Because you'll notice in a lot of those pictures, Elon Musk is wearing a bulletproof vest, which is why his body shape looks so weird.
I have not noticed that.
Yeah, his kid is not wearing a bulletproof vest. So what kind of father thinks that he's in danger of being shot and then brings his kid along and has no protection for the kid?
Wait a minute. He's wearing a bullet. I thought he was just like really, I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm just saying,
no, he is also awkwardly shaped.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's been an analysis on it. A couple different security sites have, and I think they figured out what the exact model of the vest is. I don't remember it offhand, but like that is why his torso looks so weirdly shaped, is because he's wearing a bulletproof vest underneath his shirt.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, that is interesting and revealing. Weird note to end on, but we do end there. Chris, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate you using your voice. And I think the best way to end is in your own words, where you said, quote, "Never be afraid to do what's right. If no one ever says anything, nothing ever changes." Chris, you are awesome, man. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it as well.
Big ups to Chris Kluwe for taking the time to speak with me today. If you like this show, please go subscribe at youtube.com/@TheRickStromShow. On Apple Podcasts, please give me a 5-star rating. It certainly helps the algorithm, and write a kind comment if you can. And please do the same on Spotify. Appreciate all of you watching. Have a great day.